On today's episode of the COVID Chronicles, I wanted to talk with you about what I did during my first full day of isolation. Once I knew for certain I had COVID, and I would spend 10 days alone in isolation in Zimbabwe, I began to reach out to some other individuals. I began to reach out to some people that I knew I could trust to pray. Over a period of about 3 days, I probably contacted basically 20 people. You understand that there were security concerns about making people aware of my situation on the internet. It simply was not wise to do that. In fact, even if I did not talk about details of being alone in Zimbabwe, thoughtful people can check geotags and determine your whereabouts. And so we went silent as far as social media was concerned. I did not talk openly on social media about my situation, nor did anyone who was concerned about me back here in the United States. The members of my departing team did not talk about my situation. It was simply unwise to make other parties aware of my situation. All communication was private. But about 20 people I reached out to, people that I knew I could trust to pray. People that I had known for a lifetime in some cases. Others I had only known for a more limited period of time. But I knew they would keep a confidence. And I knew they were not curiosity seekers. They were intercessors. They were people who, when they told me they would pray, really would pray. And so I reached out using the various means available to me. Some I knew were very much involved with Twitter. I direct messaged them on Twitter. Many of them were friends on Facebook, and I sent Facebook messages to them. In some instances, I used email. I became familiar with WhatsApp. I had not used it in the past, though I had heard about it, but I discovered that it is quite popular with a number of individuals, and I installed the WhatsApp on my phone so that I could communicate with people readily using that tool as well. Texting worked with other individuals, and I was able to do FaceTime calls with people who were close to me and important to me here in the United States, and on occasion other people in Africa as well. One of the very first steps I took when I knew I was in isolation was to reach out to the United States Embassy in the capital city of Harare. I have always said that when I carry my U.S. passport, I believe I have the full confidence and strength of the United States behind me. I may not be anyone, but I have the full clout and the influence of the most powerful nation on the earth in my hand when I carry that passport. Through the years, I have often communicated with members of our diplomatic corps concerning my presence in another country. But this marked the first time that I had ever needed to ask for assistance. I'm happy to report to you today that the American consular services at our embassy in Harare could not have treated me with greater respect, kindness, and courtesy. To them, I was a name and a passport number. But when I communicated my situation to them, I had an almost immediate response. They shared with me what I already knew, that typically the airlines were holding everyone to a negative test to be able to board and to return to the United States, and that waivers almost never occurred. But then they said, we've never seen a case like yours. Indeed, as we continue our time together in these episodes, you will see that mine was extraordinary in that it was rather ordinary. I never had acute symptoms. But the embassy was very helpful to me. I reached out to them, they responded, and that began a series of communications that went on throughout my stay in Zimbabwe. Not only were they kind and considerate regarding my circumstances, but when I was later able to forward them the proper medical documentation concerning my situation, the consular services at the embassy in Harare directly contacted the State Department in Washington in my behalf and requested that the State Department contact the CDC directly concerning my situation. I was aware of an allowance that the CDC makes for travel, given the fact that one can test positive for some time after they no longer have an active case. The CDC permits people to travel with a positive PCR test and documentation they are fully recovered. I was gratified not only to discover that in my own research, but also to have our consular services contact the State Department, and the State Department in turn contact the Centers for Disease Control specific to my situation and to receive a timely response from them. As a matter of fact, in a limited amount of time, I was in possession of a formal letter given to me to present to the Ministry of Health for the nation of Zimbabwe from our embassy, making clear that the Centers for Disease Control were comfortable with my travel and encouraging the airline as well as the Ministry of Health for Zimbabwe to accommodate me in that fashion as well if I failed to achieve a negative COVID test in the days going forward. I have had the privilege through the years, often as a pastor, of knowing many people in our diplomatic corps. These are not the people who make headlines. These are career professionals whose job it is to assist American citizens abroad. And on this occasion, I'm happy to report to you, they were wonderful. So effective, in fact, that upon my return, I spoke to a representative in the local office of my Congressman, Rob Whitman, here in the Virginia 1st. My wife had had a conversation with that office, and I was delighted upon my return to contact the Congressman's office and tell him how great our State Department was to one citizen who found himself stranded in a third world country. In addition to making that contact with the State Department, I began my communications directly with Ethiopian Airlines. I found the email address for the area manager for the Victoria Falls Airport, and I dispatched an email explaining my situation. That email was referred to a man by the name of Sam. I told Sam toward the end of my experience, I have never been treated with greater professionalism and kindness by airlines. And that includes American Airlines that I had status with. Ethiopian Air was at all points extremely considerate of my situation. And even though the matter was not fully resolved at the time I finally got my negative COVID test to clear to return home, I must say that Sam and the others with Ethiopian Airlines worked industriously in my behalf. They were doing everything that they could to resolve my issue, and at no point did I ever feel like I was lost in the conversation. Not only did Sam respond to me quickly when I would request additional information or ask for a status report, but he would check in on me if things began to slow down and inform me as to what the current situation was regarding my case. I am grateful to Ethiopian Airlines. I must also tell you that I received word on the day that my team was departing to return to the United States that there was someone connected with the church that I had ministered in on the other side of the country in Chipinge, who was a medical doctor in the Victoria Falls area. I would discover, after a little bit of effort, that he no longer practiced medicine in Victoria Falls. But this was a board-certified internist who still had connections in Victoria Falls and who arranged for a local doctor to come and examine me and get all the proper documentation together. And then that doctor, a relative of a member of the church that I had ministered in Chipinge, wrote me a thoroughgoing evaluation that was provided to Ethiopian Air and on to the Ministry of Health and to the airport authorities in Victoria Falls. You have to know, I could have never have found a board-certified internist on my own in Zimbabwe. I would never have been able to do that. But God arranged all of those details. I paid $50 to the young professional who came out and did a house call to examine me. X-rays are free in Zimbabwe, but I gave them $20 in part because the young technician had to come in that afternoon in order to perform my X-ray and to read it. And I just simply wanted to be considerate concerning the time that was invested in my behalf. These people and others that I'm going to tell you about in coming episodes were wonderful to me. But I have to tell you what I said at the beginning. Over about 3 days, I reached out to about 20 people asking for their prayers. They not only prayed for me, but many of them checked up on me multiple times during those days. That includes some individuals that I know to be quite busy and have plenty of other people to be concerned about. But they were concerned about their friend and their brother who was alone in Africa. And they contacted me and encouraged me, and they prayed me out of that country along with my wife and the members of my family. So I have high praise today for our embassy in Harare, and specifically the American consular services in that office. I have high praise today for Ethiopian Airlines, and specifically a customer service representative by the name of Sam. And I am very thankful for that doctor and other Christian brothers who came alongside of me to help me. In coming episodes, you're going to hear more specifically from my wife as to what she was dealing with during these days. And I'm going to fill in some of the blanks for you of what it was like to be alone with COVID in Zimbabwe. I hope you'll keep watching these episodes.